We are live.
Awesome.
The green buttons are yes.
Okay. I'm ready to play some video games.
Dudes.
Is Enoch coming?
He's on Twitter. I think he might be watching YouTube.
Oh, okay.
All right. Is everybody ready to play some games?
Yeah.
All right. So there is a Google Doc that has started that is here. And the whole idea behind this is that video games are fun, and people like me consider themselves gamers and spend lots of time playing games. And in the process of playing games, I started thinking, you know what? Games are really excellent learning environments. The idea being that in order for you to play the game, you have to learn how to play the game. And games no longer come with these big, thick manuals on how to play. They teach you how to play by playing the game. So I started thinking that there are a lot of similarities between video games and teaching music, especially teaching music theory, especially teaching music theory fundamentals. So I thought before we break out to play some games, what are some similarities that you anticipate between video games and music theory? In a very abstract sense.
Well, they both kind of have a set of rules, but maybe those rules are dependent upon the environment in which we are playing or performing.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're playing the guitar, it might be different than if you're playing the clarinet or something like that. And depending on whether you're playing, you know, rock music or Bach or something like that, it would be different again. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head.
Sure. Any other ideas on possible similarities?
For certain things like oral skills or, you know, certain more the practical side of theory, there's a timing component, right? There's you know, it is more of a procedural kind of skill that we're teaching them rather than just information, you know, so.
Good.
I think the comparison with skills makes a lot of sense. Like you practice, you get better, and then you can do more advanced things. Leveling, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Is it leveling effect?
So improvement over time. One of the similarities that I've been thinking about a lot recently is the idea that video games and music theory are somewhat abstract. You know, a video game is not real. The book you're picking up in the video game, it's not there. It's not real. And kind of along the same lines, music theory, you know, music is a thing that you cannot touch. You can't touch it. You can't. It's one of those arts that I think relates in a very abstract way to the way video games exist in its own reality, if that makes sense.
Kind of a virtual world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of my research has been on video game design and design theory. So with the hope for today is that we will play some games. Woohoo! And in the process of playing, set aside the fun factor and play video games with the idea of how am I learning this game? How is a learning environment created? And how is this experience designed? So with that in mind, if you pop over to that Google Doc, There's a list of free games, which includes Plants vs. Zombies, Dungelot 2, Angry Birds, Two Dots, Braid, and Bastion. So, and their various platforms are available. So I was thinking we could break. I'll leave this hangout up and live. I'll still be here because I've played all these games already. But I want to give you guys a chance to play them. So you can hit mute if you want to stay in the hangout and just pop back in when you're done. But check out at least 2 of the games listed and see if you can find some games that you haven't played before.
Could you also maybe give us a brief description in case we don't know what any of these are, like a brief description?
Sure. Plants vs. Zombies is a puzzle-like tactical game where you play as a guy planting plants to protect his house from zombies who are trying to walk onto his lawn. Dungelot 2 is a dungeon crawl where you are trying to get as deep into the dungeon as possible. And you'll be tapping on various tiles in the game to try and uncover either treasures or health or monsters. And when you get monsters, you have to fight them, and you're trying to get as far as you can without dying. Angry Birds is a, I guess, somewhat of a dexterity. You pull the little slingshot back, it slings a bird across. Yeah, I think most people probably know Angry Birds. Two Dots is an abstract game about connections. You're trying to connect dots. And that's all I want to say without giving away the tutorial levels of that game.
It's a good game. I played that game.
Yeah.
I like
that.
I figured most people probably haven't played Two Dots, so that was a safe one to put on the free list. Braid and Bastion are both available on Steam for free. They have a demo, which should be fine for our purposes this morning. Otherwise, it's $5 on iOS if you really like it and want it on that platform. Braid is a story platforming game that you're trying to fix your mistakes, and I think that's all I can say about that one. Bastion is more of a kind of run around kill things, but with a cool theme and story. Does that give everyone enough intro?
It's Braid on Steam?
Bastion, Braid, Angry Birds, and Plants vs. Zombies are available on Steam for free. Dungelot 2 and Two Dots are iOS, Android only.
Okay.
For the possibility that someone has already played all of those games, or if you play a lot of games and you want to revisit early levels or an early experience of a game you already own, I recommend Sword and Sorcery, which is a Twitter-linked storytelling kind of role-playing game, sort of. Portal 1 or 2, awesome puzzles, cheeky humor. Fez is an old-school inspired platformer with a 3D twist.
Is that the game from Indie Gamer, the documentary?
Yes, that's one of the games.
Oh, I definitely want to play that. Maybe not today.
Thomas Was Alone is a story platform game. You will never feel as attached to an orange rectangle as in your entire life than playing Thomas Was Alone. And Monument Valley is a platforming game that meets MC Escher. So there is a breakdown of all the games that are available on the list. Pick 2, if you can, that you haven't already played. And try to keep some of those questions in mind of how is this thing put together, how is this environment designed, outside of just the fun factor of playing. How they create the environment that you were learning how to play in. What happens when you fail? How much does the game tell you? Does it instruct you? What kind of outcomes are there? So play some games, and let's say it's 8:17 now, my time, so how about 8:30 resume?
All right.
So you said you're going to leave this open in case people have questions?
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's probably smart.
I'm going to play 2 dots on mute because I can.
So I'm not sure. I've loaded Steam on here, but I'm not really sure how I can add a game, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Presumably this should be like the easiest thing.
All right. Let me load up my Steam engine here.
Oh, it says download PC demo, but that doesn't necessarily mean PC. It could mean Mac as well. Is that right?
Let's see. So if you click on store, which game are you looking for?
I think it's the Plants vs Zombies demo.
Mm-hmm.
I think I figured it out. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
No, I got an error. So maybe it just isn't Mac friendly. That's okay.
There should be an icon next to it that says whether or not. Where is its demo? Oh yeah, it is PC. Well, the actual game is PC and Mac, but it looks like the demo is PC only.
That's totally fine. I'll play it on the iPad or something.
Okay.
It's amazing how much of a failure you can feel while playing video games.
Yes, and how much it's okay.
This is true. You watching me play video games? This is part of my work. Crazy, no? Thanks.
All right, everybody, T minus about 4 or 5 minutes. All right, everybody, go ahead and start wrapping up on the whatever level or game you're currently on, and we will reconvene. Once you're back, leave a comment in the chat or in the Google Doc. What did you play?
I played Two Dots, and then I played Odd Planet Life.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Two Dots was less frustrating than Odd Planet Life. I couldn't seem to figure out what I was doing. I had to jump over some giant pit and couldn't figure out how to make it happen.
Did the game instruct you on what to do, or did it give you any kind of prompt when you couldn't get over the jump?
There was no prompt. No, it just you'd pass this tree and it looks like this tree is rotten, and so I tried messing around with the tree to see.
Okay.
Fine, but I couldn't find it, at least in this short period of time.
It sounds like Phil tried Braid. What'd you think?
The shift thing was pretty cool. So like,
Yeah.
you die, and then you're supposed to push shift, and then it like rewinds you back to like where the monster actually is.
Yep. That's the whole point of the whole game, is that you're trying to manipulate time forwards and backwards to be able to do what it is.
Yeah.
It's cool how the music shifts when you do that too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it cuts out and then goes backwards. Yeah,
There was a poster session at SMC last year on Braid, and doing music analysis in time, and how to get some. It had like an annotated software program for being able to do visual and audio media annotation, but it was cool. Any other game title drops? What else did people try?
I tried Plants vs. Zombies.
Okay. What'd you think?
I mean, I only played the first maybe 3 levels, so it's, I mean, it starts out very, very stripped down and very easy. It's basically impossible to not get the first level. So, I mean, I assume that as it increases, it becomes more challenging. But I mean, this is exactly the kind of easing you in step by step, introducing one mechanic at a time.
Yeah.
But I mean, so in this sense, it's like the first few levels involve no failure, right? Which is so often what we kind of think about when we think about like video game pedagogy, right? So this is just about like you have this one thing, and then the second level you have these 2 things you can do, and the third level you have 3 things you can do, and the first level is just like one strip that the zombies can come across, and your lawn gets bigger. So it's very, very much obviously kind of easing me into the game, and that I think is set up in a really nice structured way, so you just can't. Even within that, though, I think what was interesting, though I didn't fail, I quite quickly adjusted my strategy, like as I started to figure out how the game was going to work. So,
Did anybody beat 2 Dots on level 2? Because I'm so pissed off right now.
No, I wasn't able to beat 2 Dots on level 2, and then I accidentally bought more lives for 99 cents.
That's such a tease.
It is such a... I didn't read quickly enough. It was like, do you want more chances? And I was like, sure I do.
For those of you who played 2 Dots, this is level 275.
Whoa.
Boo.
Yeah. So
that's got a 2 in it. Come on.
All right, so far, one of the things that video games especially, and especially the kind of app games, have to do is something that video game design research calls onboarding, which means you have to get the players playing the game and understanding the game as quickly as possible, because if they don't understand it, then they're not going to keep playing it, and then you won't make money. So, and even big console games do the same thing. You have to get the player in the game and playing the game and understanding the game. And if it takes too long, then they're going to lose interest. And I have a feeling that the same sort of thing happens in music theory classes. You're learning a skill, and if it goes too quickly, if you can't catch on fast enough, then you start to lose interest.
Right.
You start to get frustrated. And that all comes back to kind of a flow theory kind of thing, where you have, let's see, where you have an axis here and an axis here. And as your skill increases, then the difficulty should also increase. And would be an optimal line kind of diagonally that balances that skill to challenge. There's something else that video games do which creates a strong sense of competence, autonomy, and/or relatedness that you may have experienced in your games. Hey, I got past the first level of 2 dots. Woohoo! Oh, didn't get past the second level of 2 dots.
Right.
Oh. So what happens when you fail in a video game? What kinds of prompts did you guys get when you couldn't get past something, or you didn't know what to do?
Well, in 2 dots, it asked for money. That was one prompt. Maybe I should start asking my students for that.
You didn't pass your sightseeing exam. Pay me off.
99 cents in this diminished court will resolve itself.
Yeah, are microtransactions a viable alternative to the usual academic pay scale?
Rewind button. Yeah, I didn't notice any prompts in 2 dots that were going to help me in any way. But I think the game is fairly self-explanatory. I mean, I like that it kept inventory on top of the page as to, you know, how many of the dots I had connected. But in terms of like it showing me like how to complete something like I have seen in other games, where you can sort of see how things are done correctly. It didn't do that. And then when I played Odd Planet Life, I wasn't noticing any prompts at all, but I didn't get that deeply into the game. I don't know. Did anybody else play Odd Planet? No.
I was solely determined to beat 2 dots on level 2. That I used all my time on that. I think one thing that was interesting is that I started to try different strategies to like beat the level, which sounds obvious, but like thinking about that from a teaching perspective is like, I don't know, it was kind of interesting to think about how students would like if they treated it like a video game more and just sort of try different strategies, like, you know, on their own, or try to sort of, you know, promote that kind of an environment that people might enjoy it more, or they got really frustrated like I did.
So this is maybe really obvious, but one thing that stuck out to me, and probably stuck out because I've been thinking about it a lot lately, is that almost all the feedback was positive. When something bad happens, you don't get docked points or anything. I mean, I think back to really old games where you die and you have to go back to a save point, like, you know, 10 levels before, and you're like, screw this, I'll come back to this in a week, you know, or maybe 2 weeks. Whereas it seems like these games, to keep you playing, they're like, just do it again. And that's very much not like what most of what we do. Oh, really, grading in general is usually about telling you what you did wrong and penalizing you for it.
You know, one thing that I really liked about Two Dots that I noticed was that they prevent you from retrying for a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
And so, like, once you've failed and run out of lives, you have to wait like 20 minutes or something like that. And I think that was like a great idea. You cannot do your homework for like at least half an hour.
Phil, you played Braid. What happened in that when you failed?
You just held a button and then you got to rewind time to the point that you failed, or like I guess like you rewind it as far as possible. You go a little bit before that, and then and not make that mistake again. It was pretty cool.
So far, we're seeing that initial levels are often hard to fail. There's definitely a sense of easing into the game, easy to see status, freedom to try different strategies, only positive feedback. Fail too much, you might have to sit on it for a set amount of time before trying again. Or if you fail, you just get to try again.
So the other thing about feedback, just to piggyback on Tim's comment, is, I mean, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is just, it's immediate feedback, right? If you try something and it doesn't work, I mean, you may, with a game like Two Dots 2, you may make a mistake early on that then has consequences later, and so in one playthrough of the level, you realize you've done it, but you know right away. And this is the thing. This is, I think, one of the things why I mean, if part writing is basically kind of like a puzzle game, right? It's like, imagine if you were playing Two Dots and then you had to like send it away, and then a week later you got it back. You can't see like what your strategy was, or you can't remember what moves you made to get yourself into this bad situation, and it's just like marked up, right? I mean, I think if we could just have, if I could just sit there with each of my students while they did all their part writing, and right away say, okay, here's where you went wrong, here's where you went wrong, do it again. You could have, with that kind of immediate feedback, I think you could learn much more and you develop much richer strategies, and it would be a lot more like a video game. Which is why, like, for me, a species counterpoint video game or a part writing, like an actual system that can grade something immediately is kind of like the holy grail, right? Because like, it's not even about automating the grading to make my life easier. It's just about making the feedback as immediate as possible.
True.
I think Mr. Reiner has a species counterpoint program that grades automatically. Just as an aside.
Who has that?
Mitchell Reiner.
Oh, okay.
Is that like out there that can be used?
I don't think he shares it with anyone.
Right.
He wrote it in R, but yeah, he was telling me about it.
Huh.
Yeah, he wrote it in R. It's like, I think it's very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But he says that students like email him XML, music XML files, and then they just like auto grades them.
But so it auto grades them, but do the students get the grading immediately?
I think he's got it set up so that it does, everything automatically, so they can try an assignment like as many times as they want.
Right. That's awesome.
That would be amazing. I mean, I would love to, make friends with somebody who could write a part writing app or something like that, where you could actually play a game like that, because you're right, it's just the feedback loop is too slow.
Yeah.
Or even just, some of the other things that games do so well is just positive feedback. And if you failed, and if you didn't know what to do, did the game ever tell you you were wrong, or you did that incorrectly? Here, let me show you how to do it.
Right.
It would be time-consuming, but you could always do like screen check captures. If they did send you like XML files or PDFs, you could do screen captures where you did automated tutorials about the work, you could use Paint or whatever and just circle items and record that and give it back, and it could be, it's not instantaneous feedback, but it's at least something that's a little bit more personalized, other than marks on a page with some scribble marks saying you have parallel fifths and parallel octaves and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I try to do that like with my students. I'll sort of go back and forth with a PDF, and I'll annotate with iPad or whatever. But yeah, I mean the ultimate would be like an immediate thing.
Sure.
The great thing about musictheory.net is that it works so fluidly, and
yeah, I said my
it's on a game, but it's like at least it's like immediate.
I think one of the things that with musictheory.net, or even with graded assignments, one thing that games do that we don't often do when we teach and grade, games don't ever give you the answer. If you fail and you don't know why, it doesn't say, here, let me play a video and show you how you did that wrong and what you should have done.
Right.
And I think often, even if we don't correct a student's paper, part writing, counterpoint, fundamentals, scale, what have you, I think too often the type of feedback they get is either negative or, well, here's the answer, instead of letting them, like Bryn was saying earlier, develop their own strategies and figure it out. It kind of comes back to that problem-based and inquiry-based learning of, games do that very well. They let you just, try again. Okay, that wasn't right. Try again.
I think part of the problem then is getting the students to buy into that idea of try again and try again with the subject matter. I think sometimes they either get super frustrated or they feel like they should be able to do that because maybe they feel they're inherently musical or whatever, or they're just not getting the concept, and their frustration level gets so high that they check out. Of course, I've been at a community college for the past 6 years, so my clientele is was a little bit different. I mean, I will see what happens this year at TCU. I'm expecting that it's going to be a little bit of a different scenario, but I could be wrong on that too. But definitely at the community college level, when I was teaching there, I definitely had to make things more interactive and more fun. In the classroom, I felt like, because there was just so many people that came in with absolutely no reading skills or anything. And in order to get through the amount of information that we needed to get through in the 4 semesters of the theory sequence, I really needed to make it different, interactive, and exciting, and sort of like, as much of as I hate to say it, like a playtime, but more than it was, me lecturing in front of the class. But I think that was one of the best teaching experiences I could ever have, because I think that my classes, from here on out are going to be more like that, and I think the students do get a lot out of the interactive nature that I bring to the classroom that is sort of video game-ish, I think, in a way.
There is something in psychology that has been linked with both video games and mathematics pedagogy called mindset or self-theories. And the idea being that most people are on a spectrum based on the skill or ability. So say in music theory, most people will have a self-theory that is either malleable or fixed, with fixed meaning I'm either going to be good at this or I'm not going to be good at this, with malleable being if I just work at this, I'll get better over time. And I think video games, because they show progress, and it's very easy to see your own self-progress. I usually have no problem playing game, knowing if I'm doing it right or doing it wrong, and seeing from level to level or from day to day of playing, oh, I can totally see this is a great strategy, or you can see a character leveling up. Whereas with a fixed mindset, if it's hard to see your own progress, it's easy to slip into that, well, I'm just not going to be good at this. And I know I've had so many students tell me in evaluations and office hours on papers, well, you just don't understand. Some people are good at this and some people aren't. And I think based on the research in self-theories, it's very easy, either by trying to make an effort to show progress for each student, or to just flat out intervene and say, at the beginning of a term or in a syllabus, that as long as you work hard at this, you will improve over time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that is all it takes to sway a student from a more fixed mindset to a more malleable mindset.
I think part of it too is also, I think it's our job to do something, I guess, a little bit that the games sometimes will do, and that is to sort of help guide you, to sort of give you like little snippets of information that are going to help improve, but not necessarily give the whole piece of the puzzle away. To tie into last night's conversation about us being sort of involved with the learning process, but not necessarily just giving all of the information away. And I think that's one thing that the games do really well, and I think that us as educators need to be bringing more to our classrooms, I think, is making sure that we are facilitating on that sort of fine line where we're just giving enough information and letting them discover their own routes to the answers, because we all know that not everybody gets there the same way.
If I can propose something slightly different, though, or a different take on this, like, I do appreciate all of the kind of the sort of different learning style or different path to learning that a video game affords. I think that we definitely, you can see the ed tech companies like jumping on this. Whoa, you can like automate your classroom and like, here, just give the kid like a video game that teaches them music theory, and then like, you don't have to teach a class, or like, we don't have to pay people to teach classes because we've got this game. And like, we do need, there are certain things that we offer our students that are like, in taking an approach that borrows from this. I think we still need to remember why we're here, right? Like, what is it that the one thing that we can do that a machine can't do is adapt quickly to different situations, right? So that's one sort of, I guess, caveat I would want to put on all of this, which I'm sure is probably obvious to everyone, but I don't know, maybe for the posterity of the YouTube video going online.
And here's a question. So, does it matter that when you're making a video game, you construct the world? So, for 2 dots, for example, you say, I'm going to make a world where it makes sense to draw lines between things, and that you want to put a bunch together, and all these intuitive concepts. Whereas in music theory, we kind of feel like what we're teaching is outside of us. I mean, in a way, we create, of course, the content of the classroom, but there's this shared set of practices that we all say, okay, we're going to do part writing, we're going to do harmonic syntax, we're going to do form, all that stuff. So does that matter, the fact that, or do we need to think about this as if we are constructing a world for the students to explore?
I think we do construct a world. We construct a learning environment. We have an instructional design, and so much of our syllabus, and textbook design, and assessment policy, and teaching philosophy influences the environment that students learn in. And I think the big takeaway for me from doing all of this video game research, aside from sitting on my couch and playing games and saying this research, is that there's so much that we can learn from video games that we can bring to a classroom without having to turn our classroom into a game. We can bring some of these just larger principles, like trying to work towards more immediate feedback, or giving hints and positive feedback instead of answers, or trying to cater to a student's ability level in some way, or letting a student alter their ability, alter the difficulty so that it suits what they are able to do. You know, that these kinds of things and these affordances that we have, because as Bryn said, we are flexible, we're people, and we can learn from how video games make their environment to make the in-person classroom a better learning environment.
So I mean, most of the video games we've been talking about, they're single-player games. They're not multiplayer. You know, they're kind of also, you know, and we're also talking more about kind of introducing new, like of learning a new game rather than. So I'm just thinking about kind of other ways that games can play into this, right? That we can. So I'm thinking of a specific example which I made, which I'm holding in my hand. I made these cards for my, you know, my students, and made a card game where, you know, you get different.
Oh my gosh!
Is that Scrabble essentially?
Well, it's kind of a card game. You know, the idea is that each chord has a card, and you basically want to make a functional harmonic progression in your hand, picking up and putting down. You know, it's kind of a, you know, picking up, discarding, expanding your hand, or you know, you may end up with a lot of stuff in your hand that you can't. This, I guess, is the same as maybe this 1-4-5 card game. I haven't seen this, but
it's poorly designed.
Well, it's probably the same basic idea.
No, yours looks way better.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of thought about it. I've played it. I've used it in a couple classes. But I mean, the thing that about it is that it's social, right? They're playing it in like groups of 4, right? And they're policing each other like crazy, right? So because they don't want to let anybody write, you know, 5 going to 4 because, you know, they're trying to get the points, right, and not have the other person get the points. So there's this social aspect, but really this is just a review game. This is something I do, you know, I get some small groups doing it on the last day or so of class when I'm working with another group who has like a lot of burning questions, you know, or things like this. But it also kind of, I've had varying degrees of success with the buy-in. Like some groups have like totally taken it and run with it. You know, some groups start using the cards in different ways and started laying it out like Scrabble and stuff. So, you know, I don't know, but it was, yeah, and I'm totally willing to share. Share the, you know, the basic version of this. And you know, the idea is that you can also you know, with the first term, I mean, I used it for the first quarter class, and they just had like 1 and the inversions of 5, and you know, 1-6. But then I added in diminished chords for a later version, and you can kind of, that's the idea. So
do they like? Is there more to it than just like laying down cards? Like, how does the game actually work?
It's kind of like gin rummy, right? Mm-hmm. That you're trying to get something workable in your hand, and then you kind of call.
Oh, so
right?
you're drawing cards. I see.
Right. So it's more like a kind of gin rummy type.
You know, what would be a great wrinkle to it is that you could have them then like perform sing the bass line in order to get their
yeah.
Their points.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's kind of. I've tried it a few times, and I'm still kind of refining it. So I'm, you know, but it just as another type of game, right? Thinking in terms of a card game or board game type model, you know. And again, I've seen, you know, these music theory board games, which are fundamentals, which are kind of just terrible and no fun to play, you know. So I think that's another thing to, you know, that's probably the thing I thought about most with this is like, how is there going to be some different strategies and kind of different, you know, to make the game a little more interesting.
Here's another, this is kind of on another topic, so here's another thought about the comparison with games. So when you're playing a game, you typically don't have any goal beyond that game. You're like, I'm going to play this game, I'm going to have a great time. Music theory classes are obviously situated in a larger context. And especially for certain students for whom they're just concentrated on the degree, or they might be just concentrated on their instrument, or they might be taking this as an elective or something like that. They see it in a certain context. So maybe that, maybe that means to some extent we're successful to the extent that we get students to see this as something just to enjoy for itself. Because then you want to figure it out. You want to explore it. You want to succeed at it, rather than seeing it in a larger context, seeing it as a tool to get somewhere else.
Definitely. One of the things that some video game researchers have talked about is that, yes, people play games for fun, and they elect to play the games. You know, they choose, I'm going to play a game, versus I choose to take freshman theory.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, researchers have found that games also fulfill certain player needs in competency, autonomy, and relatedness, which is based on Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory. The idea that if you need to feel more competence in your life, you'll play a game. The game that you might choose to play would be something where you can see your skills building and that you can see your improvement over time. Versus if you feel like you need more autonomy in your life, you might choose to play something like a role-playing game where you take on a persona and you get to make your own decisions. Versus relatedness, where you might play a game to be with others and to cooperate and compete and have that togetherness aspect in your life more. And that, so these games aren't just for fun, but they are also fulfilling kind of basic needs in people.
My brother learned to read from playing Final Fantasy on Nintendo. Like, do you remember the old school games where we had to like read the little chat bubbles? They didn't have the ability to speak English to you, so you had to read the little boxes. Like my brother actually learned how to read from playing video games, so they certainly have longer term effects than just the game itself.
I wonder if I could pose a question. Is my mic working? Can
Yeah,
everyone
you're
hear me? Okay. Well, I've been thinking. This is kind of a metaphor, so I'm kind of wondering how it would translate into the classroom. But I'm thinking of games like The Last of Us or Uncharted, which they involve environmental puzzles, or Portal. I think Portal was on the list too, wasn't it? In which visual cues in the environment help the player figure out how to complete the puzzle, but no explicit instructions are given. I'm thinking of, for example, in The Last of Us or Uncharted, yellow things indicate this is climbable or this is movable or something like that. And sometimes that's a strip of police tape, or it's a school bus, or it's, just different objects that are yellow. They're not always the same, but they always clue you in to, okay, this is something I can manipulate. And I'm wondering if there's a way to translate that into oral, to train students to listen for oral cues that would perform a similar function for helping them figure out the puzzle of the assignment. Or does that make sense? Does anything I just said make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking about how it could relate to Jonathan's card game.
Yeah.
In the sense that you could also have a level where, and I mean this is going beyond just sitting down and playing cards, but you could have a melody that was played, and then you'd have to lay down cards that would harmonize that melody appropriately, or something like that.
It looks like this 4-5-1 thing has something like that, where you have a set of cards with scale degrees, and then a set of cards with Roman numerals.
Yeah. I did something like that in oral skills many years ago. I haven't taught oral skills in like 5 years, but there was what I call the Great Harmonic Dictation game, which was like Jonathan's game in the sense that what did I had, it was always a game with 3 groups. Gosh, I really should have written this down because I don't know if I'm remembering all the rules. But one of the groups was a performing group, and they had a set of scale degrees that I gave them that they would have to then sing on a neutral syllable. And the other group would have to transcribe what they sang. And then if they got the transcription incorrect, then the third group could steal the points so they had to pay attention as well. And I believe there was something also in there where the transcribing group not only had to sing back on scale degrees or solfege or whatever, but then also had to suggest a Roman numeral bass line or something along those lines. And I did this all with like very little actual physical materials, but it was sort of like the game that Jonathan has designed in the sense that you're sort of trying to pick out a progression, but it was from an oral skills perspective.
So we should probably go ahead and start wrapping up since our next session is supposed to start in 10.
Okay.
So any final thoughts on video game or general game takeaways?
I don't have any final thoughts, but I really want to see Jonathan's like template and rule set, and
I'm just getting the rules, and I'll in a Google Doc, and I'll put a link into this Google Doc, and I'll tweet it.
That's great. Yeah, I think we could really run with it.
For anyone that will also be in Boulder, I will have a whole little bag of games with me. Granted, none of them are music games, but Red 7 might have potential for reskinning, so instead of art and paint and colors, it could be music instead.
One other idea you can actually make, if you aren't teaching fundamentals, you can do Sudoku puzzles with using different rhythmic values or even notes on a staff or something, and people have to match them.
That would be cool. I would want to be.
Like maybe or chromatic scales. Yeah, I think I've seen people try to do this with like matrices for 20th century stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
The difficulty is that you only have 9 different possibilities.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
or 16.
Right.
That would be hard. All right. Oh, hey, Chris. You made it.
It's in time for us to be done.
Yeah.
Good. I'm hungry.
Oh.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody, and that's a wrap.
Can someone tweet the schedule again?
The schedule?
Yeah, I don't remember what is next or anything like that. So
It's I'll do that. The link to the folder with all of the Google Docs is right at the top of the page on the website, and I think the schedule is one of those.
I think
Yeah.
Megan posted it too, didn't you?
Let me rename that, and then I'll tweet it.
I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay. What is next?
Next is standard space grading.
Cool.
all right. See you all in 10 minutes or whatever.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
So we're saying 12:20?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. Cool.
Megan, are you gonna start up the next one, the next Google Hangout, or Chris, are you gonna take that?
I can do that. Then it's real quick to just put it on the website.
Okay.
Cool. See you soon.
See you guys.